Injuries might be part and parcel of contact sports, but they sure are frustrating. Kawhi Leonard finally came back from his 493-day-long break following an ACL injury, and now it's raising some questions. In today's video, we'll be telling you all about the history of his injury and how the player is feeling about his progress now that he's finally back in the game, so stay tuned to find out everything. First up, here's what you need to know. If you've been following Leonard's career, you'd know that he's someone who rarely speaks. The man has spent his time in the NBA building a silent and stoic repute for himself. And well, we witnessed him go silent for a pretty long time after his unfortunate injury in the second round of the 2021 playoffs. With a torn ligament, the NBA star was entirely absent from the 2021-22 campaign, which not only was a bummer for his fans, but other Clipper fanatics as well. But here's some good news for all. The man has finally returned, and apparently he's stronger than ever. We're sure that you've got a bunch of questions regarding the player. What's he up to? How has he been? How is he feeling? Well, don't worry about it. We'll be revealing it all in this video. Moving on, here's what Leonard had to say in his exclusive interview after the long break. The player was recently interviewed by a journalist from Fox Sports, Melissa Robin, in which he talked about his feelings and how he managed to make it through. Well, getting the player to talk's a pretty huge accomplishment, so kudos to that. Now, let's dive into what he said. Apparently, the first part of the break was the worst one for the NBA star. By the first part, he of course meant being sidelined from the team and what was certainly going to be a very promising playoff run. We can't even imagine how disappointing it would have been for him. The player also mentioned that he was very scared of the what-ifs. He said that they haunted him throughout the game and that he was terrified of not being able to return. Following up, let's take a look at Leonard's time with the Clippers. To say that Leonard was a star of the team would be an understatement. He was definitely one of the biggest contributors to their victories. This was evident with the fact that the team had to say goodbye to the hopes of winning a championship within just 6 games. The player currently has a $103 million contract with his team, which he signed in 2019. Prior to this, he'd managed to finish his second NBA championship with a Finals MVP award. That's pretty impressive, isn't it? He joined the Clippers with his close friend Paul George, and the two certainly proved to be very lucky to the team. That is until his unfortunate injury. Up next, here's some history of the injury. After his excellent performance in the first round against the Dallas Mavericks, everyone had their hopes beyond high, but the first 2 rounds of the Clippers against the Utah Jazz were less than impressive. However, Leonard came back with a pretty powerful punch and scored 34 points with 12 rebounds and 5 assists in a 26-point blowout win. The performance was simply beautiful, but in Game 4, a knee-to-knee collision with Joe Ingles resulted in putting the player out of the game. Although his 31 points in the game gave the team a comfortable enough lead to win the match without him, during that match with Leonard's injury, the hope of the Clippers entering the playoffs was all gone. Up next, how is the player doing now that he's back? Well, if anyone had any doubts regarding his performance, then the star was definitely able to shut them down with his spectacular performance against the Lakers. His 14 points finish was enough to tell everyone that he was getting there, and although he might not be the sort of player he used to be, with his steady progress, we're sure that he'll be back there in no time. The champ just needs to do what feels right for him and take things slowly. We definitely won't want him to overwork himself. Now, here's what Leonard had to say about his return. The man is beyond excited to get back on the courts and finally play for his team. While talking about his experience, he mentioned that he'd been putting a lot of effort into becoming the player he was today, which was all the more painful since he wasn't able to perform in the previous season. But now that he's back, he's very happy. Okay, this might be the enthusiasm talking, but we can definitely see Leonard leading the Clippers to a championship if he finally manages to find his rhythm. What's more is that Kawhi might have to wait a bit before he can be fully back. Although his triumphant return had us all swooning, it appears that the player still has a lot of healing to do before he can play properly. Of course, this is not just a source of great frustration for the fans, but also for the champ himself. The head coach for the team, Ty Lue, spoke on behalf of the player and stated that the player was very frustrated with his condition right now. He also said that he longed to be on the courts, but now he can't travel due to stiffness in his knee, which is an even bigger bummer. It must be very annoying after he put in so much work for 15 months and not being able to play for some more time. Well, we just hope that the mental toll on him isn't too bad. At the moment, the player is feeling some stiffness in the knee. There are chances that it's only due to him playing after a very long time, but if it's due to anything else, then there's not much we can do about it. Here's to hoping that things get better for the player. And speaking of things getting better, let's look into what his dear friend had to say about the situation. Moving on, here's what Paul George had to say about his friend's return. Even though things might not go well for Leonard at the moment, it must definitely be a relief for him to know that he's got a close friend by his side. And when the player managed to finally return to the courts after his almost 500-day-long break, George was gushing over him like nobody else. During an interview with ESPN, the player talked about Leonard's performance after the break and said that he was doing pretty great. Well, looks like all the time he spent in rehab actually did some good. Let's just hope that the setback he's facing right now now is temporary and he can get back on his feet soon. Apart from this, George also noted that his friend looked like himself while playing on the court. He also mentioned that Leonard looked like a young child dribbling around the court and just having the time of his life. Well, we can only imagine the glee Leonard finally felt when he returned to the court. And in a way, George's description is very wholesome since it totally explains how much this sport means to Leonard. Another thing, from the way he's talking about the progress, we're just going to assume that Paul George kept visiting him through his rehab process and helped him out from time to time. Do we smell bromance? Lastly, here are the improvements George has seen in the Clippers star since his return to the team. According to George, the end of Leonard's long break has finally allowed him to return home. And by home, we obviously mean the courts. It's good to know that during these 493 days, the player made sure to keep himself in form and work on improving his skills. His teammate and friend George has certainly made a note of that and has praised Leonard on different occasions. According to him, the star looks sharper, more explosive, and quick. These are certainly the qualities of a top-notch basketball player, but there's more. Leonard has used his time off to become stronger and better at what he does, and in his first performance showed everyone that he was more than ready to be in the courts. Apart from this, George also made sure to warn whichever player might end up guarding him in future games. He said that with more muscles, Leonard has certainly become a force to reckon with, and whoever comes against him must be wary of that. Well, we definitely can't wait to have Kawhi back on the courts and see how he's improved. Obviously, we'll be hearing the good news from the Clippers pretty soon. And that's a wrap for this video, folks. What do you think of Kawhi Leonard's return to the game? Do you think he'll be returning to his former self soon, or is there more bad news in his future? Let us know what you think in the comments down below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more awesome videos like this. See you in the next one with the latest updates.